Thanks, everyone. Apologies for the delayed start there, and thank you for the warm welcome, Josh. It's my pleasure to be here today and talk to you all about the importance of safety in your sports recreation programs. I'm going to be sharing with you guys some ways that you can ensure that participants' safety and security stays top of mind for staff and the families that you serve. A little bit about ePACT, just before we get started. So just before getting started, I thought I'd share a little bit about ePACT Network, especially for those of you who may not be familiar with what we do here. ePACT is an online emergency network used by families and organizations across North America. Families use their single ePACT record to safely and securely store any key health and emergency contact information online, and then they can share it with friends, families, and organizations that can support them in a crisis. Organizations use ePACT to collect that critical online and medical information instead of using paper forms, streamlining the data, all of the data management of critical emergency and health information, special needs, accommodation, consents, waivers, while providing reporting and communications and other support features to your day-to-day operations there. ePACT is also a proud NRPA member, providing members with exclusive discounts and resources. Today's webinar is an example of one of the few resources designated to give you special and additional information for topics that we hope will help you improve your day-to-day operations there. So I'm excited to spend some time with you today, and with that, let's get started. The key message, the key takeaway from today's webinar is recreation organizations offer a variety of kids programs, camps, and other activities throughout the year. And that includes all types of activities such as aquatics, arts, and culture programs. Besides the obvious tasks, you and your staff are responsible for providing safe and secure environment for children of all ages as they participate in your sports programming. Today we'll provide you with ways to keep safety top of mind for your staff, and we'll uncover the challenges that are common for recreation organizations across the country. Throughout our topic today, I'll be sharing some practical examples as well, in hopes that these examples actually inspire you and your staff throughout your organization. So starting with best practices, how to keep safety top of mind. We know that every organization has its own ways of ensuring safety for participants. So you've probably got a lot of processes already in place. However, there are always opportunities to add to, improve upon, especially if you've had an unexpected situation occur during your programming. I'm going to cover a few areas for consideration for your sports programs and before they start and throughout the year as well. This list isn't too exhaustive, so if you have any suggestions or questions that I can cover as I go each point, please don't hesitate to ask. Use the chat box and share your expertise through the box, and we can get to them as we go as well. So starting with being prepared for any activity. Identify a safety or all of the safety requirements that are unique to each sports programs that you host. So say as an example, you're offering swimming lessons. Make sure that you're aware of your participants' abilities and whether anyone might require special assistance near or in the water. Ensure participants are always actively supervised. So if you guys don't have a designated lifeguard per se, choose a water watcher person whose only job is to watch participants in the water without any distractions. And also be sure to also switch up this person. If this person is not a lifeguard per se, make sure you switch up that staff member so that their eyes and the attention span is always fresh. If we're talking about soccer, football, volleyball, baseball here, make sure that you have crucial medical information and contact information ahead of time. And that way you can access it quickly and easily on the go. These are fast, active sports, and though they're very exciting to watch, they can also lead to sports injuries, serious injuries such as concussions, muscle strains. So make sure you're ready to support your participants at any time. If we're talking about sports such as climbing or parkour, both of these sports are high energy activities for kids to participate in. So ensuring that there's no running around the pool So ensuring that there is no running around the pool. These activities require participants to take care while they're on the climbing wall or in the gym. They should be essentially instructed on how to ensure their personal safety and how to take care not to interfere with the safety of others. Ensure that your staff is certified for each activity that they're responsible for. As you know, in case of aquatics or swimming programs, staff should be lifeguard trained, first aid, and CPR trained so that they're ready to deal with any situation that may arise on or around the water. If you're offering additional programs that are focused on open water activities, you may also want to consider certification or special training around small crafts like kayaks, canoeing, etc. For other sports like archery as an example, ensuring that staff is properly trained is a high priority. For this example, USA Archery has a dedicated certification program to train staff as archery coaches and ensure that they have the right safety knowledge to ensure that youth can have fun learning that new sport while staying safe in the process as well. Education is and should be ongoing. There are general recreation certification and training that staff can get. Individual items such as emergency first aid kit, day camp certification are a couple examples, and staff can get additional education like playground safety training or even first responder training to improve their skills and be better prepared for emergency situations. Also, provide staff and participants with necessary safety equipment for each activity. Rescue equipment as an example, so tubes, cans, rings, things to use around the pool, also known as throwing or reaching assists, and ensuring that there are life jackets, of course, and personal flotation devices easily accessible as well. And there's also likely to be equipment around the pools or the pool deck, which can also enhance your program. So say we're talking about, think of the water noodles as an example. These are great items to use in case of an emergency as well. First aid kits, make sure that these are regularly reviewed for any missing or depleted supplies, and add to them as you realize that you need new items. This is the perfect place to keep things such as an EpiPen or an emergency asthma inhaler so that staff can easily get to them when they need it. Emergency kits, these are sort of the next step, the next level up. They're much more robust than your first aid kits. They should include supplies to support your staff and your participants following a more, say, widespread emergency such as a severe weather event or a lockdown. Emergency kits often have a first aid kit as part of the kit, and they also have food and water supplies for participants, and that should cover at least 72 hours. So it includes blankets, hand crank radios, and flashlights with extra batteries as well. Appropriate clothing and footwear. If we think about sports activities that require that those equipments as well, so say we're talking about wall climbing or archery, so helmets, eye protection, gloves, shoes should be readily available for participants, as well as safety ropes for wall climbing and so forth. If you guys are using third parties for any of these activities, make sure that any waivers that are required are completely and submitted by families before the program actually starts. These ensure that everyone essentially understands the requirements for each program or activity and help re-emphasize your dedication to safety for your participants. Collecting and managing the right information for your participants. So on this one, make sure that you have the most up-to-date emergency information or emergency contact information for each participant in your program or activity. That should include pickup details, so including who can or maybe cannot pick up a child in case of an emergency, an alternative guardian if parent or primary guardian can't pick up a child for any reason. Also make sure that you can access this information quickly and easily, especially if you're off-site or in an area that you have limited Wi-Fi or cell phone connection. This information can also change very quickly. So, and this is something that can happen throughout the year quite a few times. So it's also a very good idea to give families a way to update this information as they need to, which is really in everyone's best interest. Also, identify participants with special needs or that need special accommodations, generally and specifically for the program that they're registered in. So for kids that required specialized care, it's important for adaptive recreation staff to have as much information as possible to prepare their programs and help everyone to safely participate in sports activities. Also, gather information about allergies and any required medication or equipment for participants before a program or activity starts, so you can prepare as much as possible as well. With participants spending time in a new or different environment from home or school, allergies that are often well-maintained or well-managed at home can become a concern during a sports program or an activity. So whether participants have a seasonal or environmental allergy, it's important to collect as much information for parents ahead of time, ahead of program start dates, about those allergies, the severity of that allergy, and of course what should be done, what treatment should be done in case of a reaction. And make sure that you have the necessary equipment as well. So again, this could be an EpiPen, a medication that is always available to treat when a reaction does occur. As we mentioned before, if there is a way to encourage parents to teach their children how to use that equipment or medication, that goes a long way as well, getting them into essentially buying into your safety processes there, and it means that more people are going to be prepared for emergencies before they happen. A practical example, and it all goes back to essentially being thorough. One thing that we often come across during registration forms here at ePACT is departments are asking very general or basic questions. As an example, one of the questions that we see here all the time is, does your child have medical concerns we need to be aware of? The challenge with this type of question is that parents are very busy, and without asking them specifically about allergies, specifically about special accommodations or medications, they may not think to note that information down on your registration form. In our experience, asking more detailed questions has prompted parents to provide the right information up front and all the details that you may need to support those participants as well. Next up, identifying a safety point person. A point of staff member that will be your key safety expert to make safety a priority for everyone, not only staff, but families as well. Even though safety is the responsibility of everybody in your staff, this individual can further amplify your culture of safety, act as a role model for program participants, and really be the point of contact person for other employees to connect on anything safety related. Staying up to date with your organization's safety processes is another thing that this person should do. Taking the lead on implementation of new ones, it's also going to become part of their responsibility, as well as educating their peers and fellow staff members. To take this step even further, what you may want to do is to consider having a safety director who receives formal training at a conference or distance sort of education programs as well, to help them become and really remain as an expert on everything to do with safety within your organization. This expert should focus on key areas that are applicable to your organization. So this could be kitchen and food services, health services, emergency preparation, transportation, travel supervision, and what to do, what to consider for a new program or a new activity. So as an example, if you're introducing that new archery program, make sure that this individual understands staff training requirement, equipment that's needed, and participants' responsibility as well. If you're able to provide if you're able to provide them with access to additional training as well, and this could be internal or external, then you're supporting them in their learning and making it easy for them to continue to do so. So for example, consider training them as a certified parks and recreation professional, or maybe as an aquatic facilities operator, or even as a certified playground safety inspector. Let other staff know who this person is and why this person is the single point of contact of resource for any safety-related questions. This will be something that you can share with parents as well in case they need to speak with someone about safety. It also reinforces your safety processes and efforts to assure that families have their children and safe when they're in your care. And it encourages a two-way communication as well between families and staff, so that safety is always top of mind for everyone, and it ensures that it remains a priority for everybody as well. Next up, review your emergency plan, have a comprehensive plan. Make sure that you have an emergency and medical information for each participant in your emergency kit, and that's easily accessible as well. There's nothing more frustrating than taking extra minutes, extra time to find information that you need, only to find out that that information is illegible or out of date. So using a tool like ePACT is great for a few reasons. Authorized staff can view participant records in a single dashboard and can easily search or filter for key information. We have a supporting administrative app as well, where authorized staff can access participants' records even without data or cellular connection on a tablet or a smartphone, and can make use of ePACT communication tools as well to reach out to parents or guardians in case of an emergency. However, if staff doesn't have access to a cell phone, ensure that that information is available electronically as well. So whether we're talking about a laptop or a tablet or even in a binder. Yes, I know we're all about eliminating or at least reducing paper forms here at ePACT, but we also understand that technology isn't always available, isn't always an option for some organizations. So even if that means printing your ePACT or your forms that can be later on stored in a binder, that could work as well. Every moment counts in an emergency, so you should make it as easy as possible for staff to find this information when they need to support their participants and to provide medical staff or emergency personnel when necessary. Have a way to communicate with parents as well, guardians, emergency contacts when you need to get important information out quickly and efficiently. So if you rely on a phone call as part of your phone tree, be aware that you may not have to call several, or you may have to call several people for each participant before reaching someone. You may not reach anyone at all when making those calls, requiring you to leave a voicemail with not knowing if that person listened to your message or not. So this can take up a lot of valuable time, especially in a crisis. This is a very sensitive situation, and it doesn't make it easy for staff to connect with parents or guardians. So consider having multiple ways, multiple channels to communicate with families so that you can be sure that they're getting your message on the right type of information, perhaps at home, perhaps having a work number and a mobile number, as well as email address, and consider using text as well, which can be the most useful way of communicating this day and age. And if you can also, either by a question or maybe by talking to them, if you can identify what their preferred method of communication is, try to use that one first. It might be the one that you get your answer, that you might get your message across the quickest as well. However you decide to communicate with families, be sure to test your emergency and communication plan regularly to identify gaps and find solutions before you have to really use it. This gives you an opportunity to revise certain areas that are specific to your organization as well. Some key elements to consider in your emergency plan are knowing who to reach in different scenarios, evacuation plans as an example, whether you're located on or off-site, routes to the nearest medical centers, designated meeting space or muster points, and risks to your region. So as an example, here in BC, we're actually at risk for earthquakes, so that's very useful information to have. Your communication plans shouldn't be the only element that you put to test, so take time to really practice your entire emergency plan there before programs start, and try to run different scenarios that could essentially be applicable to your region and to your organization. A practical example, once again, one thing that we always suggest here is to ensure that emergency contacts are somehow notified when they're listed as emergency contacts. One of the things that we learned the quickest when introducing ePACT was that a lot of people list people as their emergency contacts, and sometimes they actually have no idea that they've been listed as emergency contacts. So letting them know that they've now been listed as emergency contacts can be huge, especially in a situation where they might be going away for a while or whatever the example may be. Next up, conduct regular safety audits to ensure that you're covering all of your bases there. Review any incident reports that have been completed during or after a program, so you can see the types of incidents that have occurred in the past, and you can learn from them as well. So make a note of anything that your staff learns that can be valuable for the future. Perhaps common types of injuries that can happen when wall climbing or playing soccer as an example, and see if there are any ways that you can actually improve your safety and how your staff can actually respond to these emergency situations as they arise. This is a great opportunity to continue to improve and add to your safety processes as well, especially if you've introduced a new program or if you're adjusting an existing one. Safety should be an ongoing process, and it's important to stay up to date with new developments as well. This is also a chance to review your reports and make sure that they're capturing the right information and that staff is well aware of them, and also how to complete them correctly. Incomplete forms can impact the level of care of a participant that a participant will receive following an accident or a medical emergency. So reducing learning opportunities for staff overall and increasing risk and liabilities for your organization. So especially if there's questions about what happened or a need to revisit an incident in the future. Take time to meet with your staff within individual programs as well. That way you can gather feedback on their programs from a safety perspective as well. So find out about their experiences with that program and what they've learned, whether it's from a program that they were most recently responsible for or from a previous organization role. Honest and open feedback benefits everyone, and it invites question and learning from peers to ensure that you can continue to move safety practices forward. Encouraging your staff to share their experience empowers them to own safety and top priorities for themselves, their programs, and your organization. So group feedback provides a wider range of scenarios to discuss and helps you and your staff better prepare for emergencies to serve everyone in the future. Also follow up with participants and their families to get their feedback as well. Find out what's most important to them overall when it comes to safety programs when they're choosing to register for them. Is there anything that prevents them from signing up for a program? Is there anything that encourages them when it comes to signing up for a program from a safety perspective? So understand their experiences. If there's a child that maybe had a medical emergency in the past, or if it's a child or a parent that has experienced a widespread crisis that impacted multiple families, see what could have been done better, what could have been done differently in that case as well. So no matter who you're talking to, find out what was done well, and where there is room for improvements. This doesn't mean you failed at keeping participants safe. It means that you're ready to learn and adjust your processes to ensure that safety is always top of mind. On to the challenges here. Of course, there are always going to be challenges as you work through your safety processes. It's very important to understand them ahead of time and know how to respond to them as they occur. Doing so continues to ensure the safety of your participants and any activity they take part in. So here's a few challenges that are common for youth recreation organizations. So starting with the obstacles of paper emergency and medical forms. Most organizations use paper forms to collect emergency contact information and health or medical details from families and program participants. In fact, every year in North America, over 9 million paper forms are filled out by families for everything from schools to sports associations, to community events and recreation activities. And a significant percentage of those are used within community centers. These forms are often completed by hand, unfortunately, and they can either they're either added to a binder for record keeping or stored in a filing cabinet. What most people don't realize is that this is a common practice for organizations that can be extremely time consuming for families and staff. The average family fills out a minimum of 6 paper forms per child every year across activities that they participate in, and the average paper form takes usually 30 to 60 minutes to complete per child. Staff then spends an average of 20 minutes administrating that form, which includes photocopying that information, distributing among staff, collecting new information, filling it out, and following up in case there's anything missing. In addition, forms are often incomplete or illegible, and it's because they're not secure in general. Personal information is potentially accessible by anyone, which puts really organizations at risk and compromises participant privacy as well. So if one of the staff or children in your care requires immediate medical attention, the last thing you want is to hold up medical services or emergency services because you're trying to find their medical history, you're trying to find their forms, and you have hundreds of forms to go through, and the emergency contact phone number is stacked in a pile of papers. So very important to be able to access that information as quickly as possible as well. Onto the accuracy of emergency information. Emergencies are considered emergencies because they are unexpected, which is why the collection of these critical details are so important for your organization. Whether an emergency is considered day-to-day or more of a serious emergency, there's never a downside to being prepared, and it can dramatically affect your ability to respond quickly and effectively. So for example, in a medical emergency, outdated prescriptions or old medical conditions could affect the treatment an individual receives. If a child needs to be picked up from a program or activity, inaccurate contact information can actually alter how quickly that kid or that child gets picked up, or even if that child is picked up by the wrong contact, which is no longer supposed to be an emergency contact as well. So when it comes to medical or emergency information for children, details can also change very quickly. As part of our research here at ePACT, we found out that around 30% of all families have at least one change to their forms, to their emergency information every 4 months. And that can be anything from a new cell phone number to moving to a new house or even a job change. So information does change, and it changes pretty often. So it usually requires a tedious process of obtaining a new form or resubmitting that form, or have someone manually input and update the existing copy. And for a child that has already started a program, or say is off-site right now, that can create issues in getting the right information to the right people at that right time. On next, how to access critical information in an emergency. In an emergency, time is of essence, and you don't want to waste moments searching for this information. That being said, all participants' emergency contact medical information should be easily and quickly accessible so that your staff can respond as immediately as possible to any unexpected situation. So when reviewing your processes, here's a few things to consider. Number one, who's got the access to participant information, and how long will it take for them to access it or review it? Two, does your rec or member management system allow frontline staff to access participant information, or is it limited to office staff? Three, if you're using paper forms, is it easy for program leaders to quickly find information in a single binder filled with hundreds of forms? And last, can your staff even carry these binders? Are they allowed to carry these binders in a program or in the activity that they're responsible for? Our research showed that it takes an average of 5 minutes to find information that is stored on paper. While 5 minutes may not sound like a lot right now, in an emergency, that can have a huge impact on the well-being of your participants, especially if medical attention is actually required. In terms of the security of this information, we don't really have to tell anyone how critical the security and privacy of participant information is, especially personally identifiable information like health data. However, many organizations aren't aware that this process can put their participants' privacy at risk. So you should ask yourself and your staff the following questions. Number one, who has the access to the participant records? Only authorized staff should have access to records that pertain to participants that they're overseeing. They should not be able to see any information for participants that they're not responsible for in their immediate group. Two, is the information secure with a password or a physical lock? Whether information is accessible at a rec center or at an off-site activity, it should always be secure to keep sensitive information safe. Three, is your system compliant with privacy or legislation in your region? So as an example, in the United States, is this a HIPAA compliant solution? In Canada, is this a PIPEDA, FOIPA solution? Four, can you remove a camp staff member's permission to access this information if they're no longer working for your department? You need to be able to remove access to the information once the program has ended, or if staff member moves on from your organization, as an example there. And last, unless you're required to archive this information at the end of a program, how do you actually ensure existing confidential information is destroyed quickly and properly, whether you store it on paper or electronically? And that's, with that, guys, we're the bottom of the hour here. I wanted to make sure that I have some time for some answers and answer any questions that you may have here that might have come through that you might have thought about during the presentation. So I'm going to throw it back to you, Josh, for these questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that might have come up.
I appreciate it, Wagner. That was an excellent discussion on, especially the idea of risk management. We don't really get enough discussions on this topic of risk management and covering the bases in case of emergencies, and it's such a very important topic that recreation, the recreation component of these agencies has to focus on or make sure that they are aware of. We did have a few questions here, several by Neris, who was interested in the relationship that ePACT is going to have with RecTrack.
Okay.
Is this a relationship that's going on, and what does that look like at the moment?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm glad that Neris is in the loop for all of the new the news that came up. It is correct. We do have a relationship with RecTrack. They're one of our partners here at ePACT, and we're actually, I'm not sure if you've seen the press release, but we're actually working on an integration with RecTrack, and it should be ready by Q1 next year. From a functionality perspective, this integration is essentially going to make sure that as participants register online, that information goes from RecTrack right into ePACT in a integrated through an open API way, so that there's no importing or exporting on your end as a RecTrack or VSI user.
That sounds really useful. And there's a way that permissions are, you'd mentioned the idea of permissions and approving and removing permissions based on a program ending and so on. Is there a way that that's done on the administration end, or is that done on the user end?
Yeah, very good. So that's done on the administrative side of ePACT. And essentially what we're trying to make sure, in a nutshell, is to make sure that the right people accesses the right information at the right time. So say I was, one of your summer camp leaders, and I was responsible for, say, week 2 of summer camp. When I log in, organization administrators will be able to essentially determine which groups I have access to when I log in, which in this example would be the access to week 2 of summer camp.
Excellent. And the idea of updating information, I mean, you mentioned how frequently information needs to be updated. Does a system like ePACT or are there other systems out there that sort of automate that experience in a way that notifies people who have submitted forms that they should probably look at them and update them, or is that more of a manual process from the agency side?
Yeah, that's also a very good sort of functionality question here, especially when looking at ePACT and how we can make things a lot easier for families and your staff. So the way it would work is, say, as an example here, to give you a little bit of a situation, say I'm a parent and my cell phone's changed. Instead of going through that phone tree and trying to contact as many people or all of the contacts that I have for the recreation department, all I would do is to actually log into my account and add that new cell phone number in there. And again, it could be a cell phone number, it could be adding a new person under my pickup list, like say today I can't pick up my child, but I do want to add my brother or maybe a cousin of mine that's going to be able to pick up my kid. All of these changes can be done with a couple clicks of a button, and it makes it a lot easier for you to update your form, update your record. And once that's done, anybody who's essentially responsible for my kid, anybody who has the access to my kid's record, will be getting a notification that something's changed on, say, little Johnny's record.
Okay. There's a lot of logistics involved in this, and you're right, there's so many moving parts to try to make sure this is all happening within the time frame of an emergency, which is always important. Neris had a follow-up question to the idea of permissions, and especially with the concept of the integration and how, if they're using RecTrack, are the permissions that are set up in ePACT different, or is it or separate from the ones that are done in the other system that you're integrating with, or is there sort of a seamless user permissions method that's going to ideally take place?
Yeah, very good question. For this one, to be completely honest, I'm not too sure what kind of permission or access you have set up on your version, on your database in RecTrack. We can essentially mirror that sort of permission that you have right now within ePACT and make sure that, you know, only the right people accesses the programs or the participants that they're responsible for. But to make it simple, within ePACT, you're basically going to have two types of login. The first one being an organization administrator, which, say, this could be somebody like Naris, somebody with a full access, a full scope of all of the programs, all of the records that you have in your system. And the second type of login will be a group administrator. And when this person logs in, this person has a restricted, a limited access to a certain group, program, or division within your database. When this person logs in, the only groups this person will be able to see are the groups that the organization administrators have previously determined that they will be able to see.
Great, thank you. Don't want to get too in the weeds with ePACT and specifically what you guys are providing. I think you covered a lot of great material here in relation to pretty much a great, I think what you've provided right now is a great checklist if you're considering how you deal with data, how you deal with managing all of this logistics of risk management within your organization. Going through all the steps that you provided, I think is really going to be helpful for our members, no matter what system they decide to use in providing, in sorting out that information and having it available to the right people, as you said.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Hold on. Hold safety training for my staff. Oh, here's a great question from Haley. If I want to hold safety training for my staff, what do you recommend we include? Going back with that as well, there was a specific question from Torrance regarding some of the more contact sports like football, soccer, basketball. If you're trying to hold any specific safety training, what do you recommend?
Yeah, very good question. So you might want to do a quick refresher, sort of a refresher course on first aid training and CPR. Those two are regularly changing skills or skill sets really that are valuable in any scenario. And the inclusion of AED training as well. You may also want to do an activity or program specific training, so swimming or water safety or lifeguarding safety programs as well. While there are lots of organizations that host classes, I'd recommend checking out with the American Red Cross site, as they have a wide variety of options and ways to learn too, whether it's an online format or in-person classes or sort of a blended hybrid format there as well. And it's also a great opportunity to go over your emergency plan and processes. And even if holding drills or that way veteran staff have a chance to refresh their learning and new staff are training as early as possible as well.
Well, thank you very much for that. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in. I really thank you for your time, Wagner. I appreciate everyone's patience with us at the beginning of this webinar, and I'm glad a lot of you stuck with us and asked some very poignant questions. This is great material and a great member benefit to have you guys with us.
Awesome. I wanted to thank everybody for their time. It's a pleasure to have this session here with all of you. If any questions come up after today's session, feel free to reach out to myself or Josh. We'll be more than happy to address any other questions that might have come up.
All right. Well, thank you. With that, this concludes our webinar. We will have it up for the recording up very shortly after, and the webinar slides and links are also shared on learning.nrpa.org. You may now disconnect.